Every year on April 1st, people around the world engage in pranks, hoaxes, and elaborate deceptions, all in the spirit of April Fool's Day. News outlets publish fake headlines, corporations stage elaborate marketing stunts, and friends play harmless tricks on one another. It is a day dedicated to deception. But why? One of the most intriguing theories about April Fool's Day traces its origins back to Constantine the Great, the Roman emperor who legalized Christianity and helped shape the early Christian church. According to this claim, Constantine changed the official date of Jesus Christ's birth from April 1st to December 25th, and those who refused to acknowledge the change were mocked as April Fools. It's a compelling idea, one that suggests April Fool's Day began not as a harmless tradition, but as a political and religious attack on those who resisted an imperial decree. But is there any historical evidence to support this theory? Or is it itself a deception, a hoax about a holiday built on hoaxes? The idea that Jesus was originally believed to have been born on April 1st is not found in early Christian texts, nor is there any record of Constantine declaring such a date. The claim seems to have first appeared in modern times, circulating as an internet myth rather than a historically supported fact. However, the idea may not be entirely baseless. In early Christianity, there was significant debate about when Jesus was actually born, and several different dates were proposed before December 25th became the standard. While April 1st is not a widely recognized candidate, April was considered a significant month for religious observances, particularly in relation to the Jewish Passover and early Christian traditions. The reason we celebrate Christmas on December 25th today is not because of any clear biblical reference to Jesus' birth on that date. Instead, it is widely believed that early Christians adopted December 25th as a way to align Jesus' birth with existing pagan festivals, particularly the Roman celebration of Saturnalia and the birthday of Sol Invictus, the unconquered sun. Constantine, who ruled Rome from 306 to 337 AD, played a major role in Christianizing the empire. Before his rule, Christians had been persecuted under Roman law, but Constantine converted to Christianity and made it the dominant religion of the empire. As part of this transformation, many pagan traditions were absorbed into Christian customs, possibly including the date of Jesus' birth. By moving Jesus' birthday to December 25th, Constantine may have been attempting to unify his empire by merging Christian and pagan beliefs. But there is no solid evidence that April 1st was ever considered the original birth date of Jesus, nor that those who disagreed with the change were labeled as April Fools. While April 1st is not traditionally associated with Jesus' birth, some scholars have suggested that it may have been connected to early Christian festivals. In some medieval texts, April 1st was linked to themes of renewal, rebirth, and even mockery, all of which could tie into later traditions of April Fool's Day. One possibility is that April 1st was linked to Easter traditions, which often fall in late March or early April. Easter is the celebration of Jesus' resurrection, and in some interpretations, the Fools of April 1st could have been a reference to those who doubted Christ's return. Others have suggested that April Fool's Day may have evolved from Jewish Passover customs, in which certain games and symbolic acts of confusion were performed. Since Christianity has deep roots in Jewish traditions, it's possible that some form of April foolery existed in ancient times. Despite its popularity in alternative history circles and online conspiracy theories, the idea that Constantine changed Jesus' birthday from April 1st has no basis in historical records. There are no early Christian writings, imperial decrees, or church documents that support this claim. Instead, it appears that this theory is a modern invention, perhaps itself an April Fool's joke that was mistaken for historical fact. However, while the Constantine theory may not hold up to scrutiny, the idea that April Fool's Day has deep historical roots is not entirely wrong. The holiday may not have started as a religious deception, but it does have ancient connections to festivals of trickery, mischief, and seasonal changes. To understand the real origins of April Fool's Day, we must look beyond Constantine and into the pagan and medieval traditions that celebrated chaos, confusion, and deception. Another major theory regarding the origins of April Fool's Day comes from a dramatic change in how we measure time itself. This theory suggests that April 1st became associated with foolishness and deception due to the confusion caused by the transition from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar in the late 16th century. For centuries, most of Europe followed the Julian calendar, which had been established by Julius Caesar in 45 BC. However, this calendar had a major flaw. It miscalculated the length of a year by about 11 minutes, causing the calendar to drift out of sync with the solar cycle over time. By the late 1500s, this small miscalculation had resulted in a significant problem. Important religious dates, such as Easter, which was supposed to be based on the spring equinox, were slowly shifting further away from their original intended dates. This led Pope Gregory XIII to introduce a radical change in 1582, the Gregorian calendar, which is still in use today. The Gregorian calendar reset the dates to correct the drift, and it also established a new official date for New Year's Day, January 1st. Before this change, many cultures celebrated the New Year in late March or early April, following the spring equinox as the natural marker of a new cycle of life. With the switch to January 1st, people who continued celebrating New Year's in the old way on April 1st were seen as foolish and outdated. According to this theory, those who were slow to adopt the new calendar were ridiculed, tricked and mocked, giving rise to the custom of playing pranks on April 1st. Over time, this mockery of the April Fools supposedly evolved into a tradition of light-hearted deception and practical jokes, eventually becoming the modern holiday we recognize today. One of the strongest pieces of evidence supporting this theory comes from France, which was one of the first countries to adopt the Gregorian calendar in 1582. French people who stubbornly clung to the old tradition of celebrating New Year's in April were supposedly referred to as April Fools and were often targeted with practical jokes. One particularly famous prank involved sticking a paper fish onto someone's back, symbolizing that they were easily caught and gullible, much like a fish being hooked. This tradition became known as Poisson d'Avril, and it is still celebrated in France today. On April 1st, school children and pranksters continued the custom of taping paper fish onto people's backs as a playful joke. While this theory is compelling, there are some problems with the idea that April Fool's Day was entirely a result of the switch to the Gregorian calendar. First, different regions switched calendars at different times, meaning that the transition wasn't uniform. Some countries, such as England and Scotland, didn't adopt the Gregorian calendar until 1752. Yet there are records of April Fool's traditions dating back long before this date. If the holiday was purely based on the calendar change, we would expect April Fool's Day to have emerged only after each country adopted the new system. But historical records suggest that prank traditions existed before the switch. Second, April Fool's Day is not limited to Europe. Many cultures around the world have similar trickster festivals, some of which predate the Gregorian calendar entirely. This suggests that April Fool's Day might be part of a much older human tradition, one that goes beyond mere calendar confusion. Although the calendar shift theory explains how April the 1st of May have been associated with confusion and mockery, it does not fully explain why pranking, trickery, and deception became central to the tradition. To find the deeper roots of it, we must look at ancient cultures, where festivals of mischief, role reversal, and controlled chaos were common. Many of these celebrations, which took place around the beginning of spring, bear striking similarities to the modern-day April Fool's traditions. Throughout history, many ancient cultures celebrated seasonal festivals that involved mockery, pranks, and the temporary overturning of social order. These events, often tied to the arrival of spring, were times of controlled disorder where rules were bent and people indulged in behavior that would normally be forbidden. One of the oldest connections to April Fool's Day can be found in ancient Rome, where the festival of Hilaria was celebrated on March 25th in honor of the goddess Sibyl. The festival, whose name means joy or hilarity, was a day of laughter, disguise, and role reversals. Participants wore masks and costumes, playing tricks on each other and mocking the established order of society. It was a time when the normal rules of behavior were suspended, much like modern April Fool's Day. Hilaria was also linked to seasonal change, marking the end of winter and the rebirth of spring. Many ancient cultures saw spring as a time of transition and unpredictability, making it the perfect occasion for playful deception and disorder. In pre-Christian Celtic traditions, festivals marking the transition from winter to spring often included trickster spirits and mischievous pranks. One such festival was Imbolc, a seasonal celebration held between late March and early April. It was believed that spirits and fairies were particularly active during this time, playing tricks on unsuspecting people. Many communities engaged in ritualistic mischief, telling outrageous lies or performing pranks to honor these supernatural beings. It's possible that elements of these Celtic trickster traditions merged with other European customs over time, contributing to the development of April Fool's Day. Far beyond Europe, the Hindu festival of Holi, celebrated in late March or early April, also shares similarities with April Fool's Day. Holi is a festival of mischief, laughter, and playfulness, where people engage in pranks, throw colored powders at each other, and break societal norms in a day of joyous chaos. Traditional rules of behavior are momentarily suspended, and even authority figures become fair game for jokes and teasing. Some historians believe that the cultural mindset behind Holi, a temporary period of playful disorder to welcome spring, is similar to the underlying spirit of April Fool's Day. During the Middle Ages, European societies embraced their own festivals of reversal and disorder. One of the most famous was the Feast of Fools, a celebration that occurred in late December or early January within Christian communities. On this day, low-ranking clergy members could mock their superiors. Ordinary townspeople could parody the nobility, and elaborate pranks and deceptions were encouraged. The Feast of Fools was eventually banned by the Church, as it was seen as too wild and irreverent, but its spirit of social role reversal and mischief likely survived in other traditions. Looking at these ancient celebrations, one pattern becomes clear. Across multiple civilizations, from Rome to India, from Celtic tribes to medieval Europe, there existed a universal desire to mark the changing of seasons with laughter, trickery, and social role reversals. It seems that April Fool's Day did not originate from one specific event, but rather evolved from a long-standing human tradition, a need to embrace humor, disorder, and unpredictability, especially at times of seasonal change. So while April Fool's Day may not have one single origin, its roots go deep into human history, stretching across continents and cultures. But how did this ancient tradition survive into the modern world? What caused it to resurface in Renaissance Europe and eventually spread worldwide? As the ancient world gave way to the Middle Ages, many of the old festivals of mischief and trickery disappeared, either banned by religious authorities or replaced by Christian celebrations. But the spirit of playful deception never truly vanished. Instead, it transformed, adapting to new cultures, new customs, and new ways of marking time. By the late medieval period, April Fool's Day, as we recognize it today, was beginning to take shape, evolving into an unofficial tradition of pranks, hoaxes, and role reversals. Though its exact origins remain unclear, evidence suggests that various regions in Europe developed their own prank-related traditions, which eventually merged into the modern April Fool's Day we know today. One of the earliest written records of April Fool's Day can be traced back to the 1500s in France, where the prank tradition known as Poisson d'Avril first emerged. In this custom, people would secretly attach paper fish to the backs of unsuspecting victims, symbolizing gullibility, like a fish being caught on a hook. This tradition spread quickly, becoming a beloved annual joke among both commoners and nobility. Over time, the French custom of the April fish evolved into a day of general pranks, with people playing tricks on friends and family. In Scotland, April Fool's Day lasted 2 days, with the first day dedicated to tricking people into foolish errands and the second day, known as Taily Day, involving placing fake tails on people's backs, much like the French April fish tradition. In England, pranksters would send victims on absurd or impossible missions, often instructing them to deliver nonsensical messages to confused recipients. This form of trickery, known as a fool's errand, became one of the most classic April Fool's jokes. In Germany and the Netherlands, April first became associated with hoaxes and false stories, often told to embarrass those who were too quick to believe what they heard. Despite regional variations, one theme remained consistent. April 1st became a day for practical jokes, deception, and exposing gullibility. By the 17th and 18th centuries, April Fool's Day had become a well-known custom throughout Europe. and references to it began appearing in literature, newspapers, and historical documents. The English poet John Aubrey wrote about April Fool's Day in 1686, referring to it as a fool's holy day, suggesting that the tradition was already well established by then. A few decades later, in 1713, April Fool's Day was mentioned in The Spectator, a popular London publication, describing the elaborate pranks that had become common in the city. By the 18th and 19th centuries, the tradition had expanded beyond small-scale personal pranks to include larger-scale public hoaxes, particularly in newspapers and printed media. Fake announcements, false news stories, and elaborate tricks became part of the April 1st tradition, further cementing the holiday's reputation as a day of mischief and deception. As European nations expanded their influence across the globe, the tradition of April Fool's Day spread with them. By the 19th and early 20th centuries, April Fool's customs had taken hold in North America, South America, and beyond, often mixing with local traditions to create unique regional variations. In the United States, April Fool's Day became widely recognized by the late 19th century, with newspapers publishing fictional stories and elaborate hoaxes to celebrate the occasion. The rise of mass media and communication in the 20th century further propelled April Fool's Day into a global phenomenon, turning it into a day of widespread pranking, misinformation, and viral hoaxes. By the mid-20th century, April Fool's Day had firmly established itself as a light-hearted day of trickery, with individuals, corporations, and even governments participating in the fun. The invention of radio, television, and later the internet allowed for even more elaborate hoaxes to be played on a massive scale, with media outlets publishing fake stories and satirical news reports to fool their audiences. But as this tradition grew into a modern media event, it also transformed in ways that no one could have predicted. Over the centuries, April Fool's Day has evolved from small-scale pranks among friends into massive hoaxes capable of deceiving entire nations. What started as a tradition of personal trickery has been embraced by news outlets, corporations, and even governments, leading to some of the most elaborate and legendary pranks ever pulled. From convincing news reports to viral internet stunts, April 1st has been the stage for some of history's most famous deceptions. Here are some of the most spectacular hoaxes that fooled the world. One of the most famous April Fool's Day pranks in history was broadcast by the British Broadcasting Corporation on April 1st, 1957. During a segment on the highly respected news programme Panorama, the BBC aired a story about a Swiss family harvesting spaghetti from trees. The segment showed women carefully plucking strands of spaghetti from the branches of trees and laying them out to dry in the sun. The news anchor, Richard Dimbleby, explained that due to a mild winter and the elimination of the spaghetti weevil, Swiss farmers were enjoying a bumper spaghetti crop that year. At the time, pasta was still considered an exotic delicacy in Britain, and many viewers had never seen how it was made. Thousands of people fell for the hoax, with some even calling the BBC to ask how they could grow their own spaghetti trees. The BBC later admitted the prank, but the spaghetti tree hoax remains one of the most famous April Fool's jokes ever broadcast. In 1996, Taco Bell, one of the largest fast food chains in the United States, pulled off an April Fool's prank that caused a nationwide stir. The company took out full-page ads in major newspapers, including the New York Times and the Washington Post, announcing that they had purchased the Liberty Bell, a historic American symbol of freedom, and renamed it the Taco Liberty Bell. The public reaction was outrage. People flooded Taco Bell's corporate offices with angry calls, demanding an explanation. News outlets began covering the controversy, debating whether a fast food chain had the right to buy a national treasure. By noon, Taco Bell revealed that it was all a joke, and even the White House press secretary joined in on the fun, joking that the Lincoln Memorial had also been sold and would be renamed the Ford Lincoln Mercury Memorial. The stunt was a marketing masterstroke, generating millions of dollars in free publicity and proving that April Fool's Day could be used for corporate advantage. In 1998, Burger King pulled off one of the most hilarious corporate pranks in fast food history. The company published a full-page advertisement in USA Today, announcing the introduction of the left-handed Whopper, a specially designed burger for the 32 million left-handed Americans. The ad claimed that all the ingredients had been rotated 180 degrees so that the sandwich would be easier for left-handed people to hold, The next day, thousands of customers visited Burger King locations, requesting the left-handed Whopper. Others specifically asked for a right-handed version, believing the traditional burger had been altered. Burger King later revealed the joke, and the prank remains one of the most successful marketing stunts in April Fool's history. The internet has brought April Fool's pranking to an entirely new level, with viral hoaxes reaching millions in seconds. One of the most legendary internet pranks was YouTube's 2008 April Fool's joke, which rickrolled the entire world. On April 1, 2008, every video featured on YouTube's homepage redirected to Rick Astley's song, "Never Gonna Give You Up." Users expecting to watch popular content were instead greeted by the now infamous 1987 music video, one of the internet's most beloved trolling techniques. The prank became so popular that rickrolling is still used today, making it one of the most enduring April Fool's Day gags in digital culture. Year after year, people continue to fall for April Fool's Day pranks, no matter how outrageous they seem. Some hoaxes work because they mimic real news, while others succeed by exploiting our curiosity, trust, or lack of skepticism. But beyond being simple tricks, April Fool's Day hoaxes reflect something deeper about human psychology. We are naturally drawn to surprising, unusual, and unbelievable stories, and in today's fast-moving world, it's easy to mistake fiction for fact. However, not all pranks are harmless. Some April Fool's jokes have sparked panic, confusion, and even real-world consequences. April Fool's Day is often seen as a harmless tradition, a day where pranks and hoaxes are meant to be light-hearted and fun. But underneath the jokes and laughter, April 1st taps into something deeper: our psychology, our relationship with deception, and our fascination with trickery. Why do we play pranks on each other? Why do some people love being fooled, while others find it infuriating? And what does this annual celebration of deception and gullibility say about human nature? Pranking is an ancient human behavior, found in cultures all over the world. Whether it's a child pulling a harmless joke on a friend or a large-scale hoax designed to fool an entire country, deception has always been a part of social interaction. One reason April Fool's Day remains so popular is because pranks create shared experiences. When a joke is played on someone, it sparks surprise, confusion, and then, hopefully, laughter. This moment of unexpected absurdity can bring people together, strengthening bonds and social connection. Psychologists suggest that humor and deception trigger similar brain responses. Both involve a shift in expectation, a moment where what we assume to be real is suddenly flipped upside down. When we laugh at a prank, it's because our brains are enjoying the mental puzzle of being tricked and figuring out the joke. However, not all pranks are received with laughter. Some people feel embarrassed or betrayed when they realize they've been fooled, which is why context and intent matter. A good prank is one that is harmless, clever, and funny for both the prankster and the target. A bad prank is one that humiliates, causes harm, or breaks trust. Most April Fool's pranks are harmless fun, but some hoaxes have caused real panic and confusion. In 1980, a Boston TV station announced that a local hill was erupting in a volcanic explosion, complete with fake footage of lava flowing. Viewers panicked, flooding emergency services with calls. In 1998, a radio station in Alabama falsely reported that the local water supply had been contaminated with dihydrogen monoxide, a scientific term for water. Many people believed the report and demanded the government do something about it. These examples show how quickly false information can escalate, even when it starts as a joke. April Fool's Day, while fun, also demonstrates the power of media, perception, and trust. Despite the risks, April Fool's Day continues to be widely celebrated across the world. It has become a cultural tradition, passed down through generations and reinvented for the modern era. In an age of constant digital misinformation, April Fool's Day reminds us to question what we see, think critically, and embrace humor. It is one of the rare days where skepticism is encouraged, where people actively analyze stories and challenge their assumptions. Ultimately, April Fool's Day is a celebration of playfulness, a day where the unexpected is welcomed, the serious is made light, and the world enjoys a moment of shared laughter. April Fool's Day is more than just a day of harmless pranks. It is a reminder of how deception, trickery, and humor have played a role in human culture for centuries. From ancient Roman festivals to medieval mockery, from calendar confusion to global media hoaxes, this tradition has persisted because it taps into something fundamental about human nature: our ability to laugh at the unexpected, to challenge our assumptions, and to find joy in the absurd. But in a world where misinformation spreads faster than ever before, April Fool's Day also serves as a warning. We live in an age where fake news, deepfakes, and digital hoaxes can manipulate entire populations. What was once a day of light-hearted deception now coexists with a much more serious battle over truth and reality. The question is, will April Fool's Day continue to be a celebration of laughter and play, or will it become another tool for misinformation and mass manipulation? Perhaps the real lesson of April Fool's Day is not just to expect deception, but to learn how to see through it. In the end, the best defense against being fooled on April 1st or any other day is critical thinking, skepticism, and a sense of humor. After all, the world is full of tricksters. The question is, will you be the fool or the one in on the joke?